Okay, I just want to start by thanking the APEC Committee and 21st Century Learning for putting on this excellent event. I think that every great idea begins with a seed, and every seed begins with a vision. And it's the APEC Committee over 6 months ago that had that specific vision. And along with 21st Century Learning, they planted that seed and helped it put loads of time and energy into helping it grow and flourish into what it's become this weekend, a world-class event for our profession. So I want you to give a warm thank you and a congratulations to everybody that you see on the screen. The focus of my talk today is to kind of zero in on what I believe to be the things that matter most in our teaching, and to share some key fundamentals with you in regards to my own pursuit of excellence within my professional learning journey and education. I'm very passionate about PE. I love it. It means so much to me. I'm constantly striving to learn as much as I can about my subject area. But the lessons, ideas, and stories that I share with you today will seem like they have nothing at all to do with PE. However, I can assure you that they have everything to do with shaping the physical educator and person who stands before you. There are many passionate physical educators here from around the globe at APEC, and they're going to share with you their knowledge and wisdom and experiences that will help each and every one of us deliver the most powerful physical education experiences for our students. We've got top researchers here that will share their expertise with you in regards to different teaching models of physical education. We've got amazing department heads and other PE teachers here that will share their insight, their knowledge, their teaching strategies, and approaches that they've used over the years that has had a profound impact on student learning. So it's imperative that you absorb as much as you can from them and take the big ideas back with you to apply in your program first thing on Monday. So be a sponge and learn as much as you can about PE. However, as I said before, I'm not here to talk about anything that's PE specific, but more so to strike at the heart about what it means to be an educator and the power and potential that we have to change lives forever. And to me, that's what ultimately defines us the most in our careers. It's that long-lasting impact that we have on the students who cross our paths throughout our career. It's about the footprints that we leave on our profession that matter the most. Regardless of your role in education or your purpose for being here today, I ask you to connect the dots in your own lives as I share 3 very valuable lessons that I've learned that I think are applicable on both a personal and professional level. And it's through a near-tragic experience that I learned these lessons. And the lessons are very simple. To be mindful, to be prepared, and to be inspired. Nearly 5 years ago, I was almost killed in an accident in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Long story short, a bus backed into a group of players at a soccer tournament in a crowded parking lot. Sensing danger, as any good teacher would do, I ran up beside the bus and I smacked the door to get the driver's attention. He didn't stop, so I smacked it a second time. The problem was that the glass on the door was not proper safety glass. It was more like wine glass. I didn't know that. The second time I smacked it, that's when my hand went through, completely severing the ulnar artery in my left wrist. I knew it was a serious arterial injury because blood had squirted out and almost splashed the driver of the bus. I fumbled about in desperation and grabbed onto my wrist trying to stop the bleeding and held my hand as high above my head as I could. And with blood pouring down all over my head and body, I thought, holy shit, this is it, I'm going to die. This can't be it. I've got 2 beautiful boys, Eli and Ty, and my lovely wife, Neela. They were all that I could think about as I went in search for help. The school's secondary principal was the first one to come to my aid. He arranged for the driver to rush me down to the foreign clinic, which was about 40 minutes away in traffic. My wife was called and said, get down there. And I arrived drenched in blood. The doctor in the emergency room immediately assessed that I needed an orthopedic surgeon. I needed emergency surgery. That it was only an orthopedic surgeon that could handle that was trained or qualified to handle such a procedure because of the extent of damage. However, there were no orthopedic surgeons around on that morning. For the next 3 hours, clinic staff rushed around trying to figure out what to do. By now, intense pain had set in and was radiating up my arm. My arm was turning dark purple by this point. But after 3 hours of 3 very scary hours, lots of panic, I had my stroke of good fortune. I received word that they had found a surgeon, Dr. James Gulligley, a retired Scottish orthopedic surgeon who ran a charity that did volunteer surgeries on landmine victims. So you can imagine how thankful I was that they found him. They rushed me down to him, and he was able to perform what's called an arterial ligation. The extent of damage was too severe, so he couldn't reattach the artery. He could just stitch it closed on either side. And although he had did this emergency procedure on me, my wrist was still mangled. I had total nerve damage done in my wrist. All the nerves were severed, along with all the muscles, ligaments, and tendons. So I was told that I would need follow-up reconstructive surgery as soon as possible to repair the damage and reconnect the artery. After 2 weeks of lots of drama, dealing with insurance and other issues, I was flown to Singapore, and I had total reconstruction done on my left wrist and hand by a top hand specialist there, who made it very clear to me that there was a distinct possibility I would never be able to use my hand again. This was followed up by 3 months of intensive and very painful rehabilitation back in Canada, and it was at this time that I seriously doubted whether or not my hand would ever work. I couldn't do up my buttons, tie up my shoes. I'm very, physically active. I couldn't run. I wasn't allowed to run. I couldn't golf. I couldn't cook, play guitar, any of the things I loved doing. So it was a very dark and depressing time. To this day, my hand only functions at 60 to 70% of what it once did. But it's not the lack of recovery that has impacted me most about my accident. It's the fact that it truly did open my eyes to what's most important in life. And it helped me to clarify and define my own purpose, which gave me greater reason to pursue excellence both personally and professionally. I want to now share with you the 3 lessons that I learned from this experience and how they've woven their way into the very fabric of my own journey in education. And the first one, as I said, very simple: to be mindful and to slow down. How often do we hear people say that time flies by? That days blur into weeks and weeks blur into months, and before we know it, another school year has passed. When we sincerely reflect back on these moments, I think we sometimes realize that we've been repeating the same old cycles and patterns and routines in our lives. And of course, we're doing good work, but to what extent have we actually grown, learned, and deepened our teaching practice? This is the point that I was at before my accident. Although I felt as though I was a good teacher, I was stuck on repeat mode, unable to move forward and grasp the bigger picture of what teaching means and the impact that I can have. The last thing that I was thinking about when my accident happened was, I can't believe how fast the year has gone, or, oh my God, my movement composition unit starts next week and I'm crap at teaching dance. What am I going to do? Far from it. I was praying for my life. I was praying for more time and a sign that I would be okay. So it was a very difficult time. 3 months after, my family and I made the transition over to our wonderful school in Nanjing, China. And it was during this time that something had shifted deeply within me, which is hard to explain. But I think that I realized that getting back to teaching was one of the best medicines that I needed at the time to help overcome the emotional and physical trauma from the injury. I found myself being more mindful of each teaching moment and what it offered me. And reflection truly did become a much bigger part of my life and continues to do so to this very day. My wife and I, a while back, were listening to our favorite podcast, the TED Radio Hour. And in this podcast, there was a guest, a Benedictine monk named David Steindl-Rast. And he was talking about what true happiness means. And his talk deeply resonated with me because it connected perfectly with the lesson that I had learned about being mindful and slowing down. And in the talk, he mentioned that humans, people, we have to create more stop signs in our lives. That in creating these stop signs in our lives, we're forced to slow down to a halt and become acutely aware of what's happening around us. And that it's absolutely necessary to build quiet time and space into our lives to better reflect on our life, on our day, on our jobs, on our family, what's working and what's not. It's so easy to fall into a rut and cruise on autopilot when things seem to be working. But mindful reflection allows us to uncover the hidden gems of our teaching practice and to discover new pathways to growth, learning, and improvement. I've made it a goal of mine over the last several years to create this quiet space in my life to better reflect on my work and my life in general. And this might be on my own in silence in a quiet room, or it might be during one of my early morning runs. But I can say with total sincerity that since I've carved out time for this daily practice in my life, it's helped me to better examine what's serving me well and what isn't, and to get rid of what's not serving me. It's helped me to kind of get in tune with the heartbeat of my mind and to better reflect on the work that I do and my life in general. If mindfulness and slowing down is already a part of your life and reflecting, great. But if it's not, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to give you the Mr. Andy 5-minute challenge starting tomorrow. And it's very difficult to do because our minds are always racing. But I challenge you to carve out just 5 minutes a day, only 5 minutes, just to slow things down and to reflect on your life and your teaching. So the first lesson has to do with creating stop signs, being mindful, and finding your own quiet space. So I hope you can do that. The second thing I want to talk about is the importance of being prepared. But before going into that, I want to tell you about this great book, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. And it's written by Chris Hadfield. Any Canadians in the audience? We know who he is. So Chris Hadfield is one of NASA's most well-known astronauts, most decorated astronauts. He's flown several space shuttle missions as well. He spent 5 straight months way up there someplace in the International Space Station back in 2013. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend you get your hands on a copy of it because there's so many valuable lessons in there that are very applicable to our everyday lives as educators. And he tells one story in particular in the book that really resonated with me with the second lesson, which is to be prepared and to never overlook the little details in our life. And the story has to do with flying jets, playing guitar, and Elton John. Now, I told you my talk would not have anything to do with PE. A few years back, Chris Hadfield was asked to be the lead pilot in a Canadian military air show. And the organizers of the event were also putting on an Elton John concert at the same time, or after the air show. And they were going to cross-promote both. And then they told Chris Hadfield that after the air show, we're going to bring you over to the concert, you're going to meet Elton John, and you can watch the concert from backstage. What a lot of people don't know is that Chris Hadfield not only is an astronaut and a fighter jet pilot, he's also an accomplished musician. He's played acoustic guitar his whole life. He's played in some big bands. He's played at the Houston Symphony, so he's very good at guitar. So when he found out he was going to meet Elton John, he thought to himself, okay, I really need to be ready for this moment. I need to be prepared because there's a chance he's going to know that I'm a musician and he's going to ask me to go on stage to play a song with him. So then he took it to the next level. And he was like, when this happens, okay, what song is he going to want to play with me? Well, I'm an astronaut. So of course it's going to be Rocket Man, yes. Chris Hadfield already knew how to play Rocket Man, but for 6 months before the concert and the air show, he took out his guitar any spare moment that he had to practice Rocket Man. And after a few months, he got to the point that he could play almost a perfect rendition of Rocket Man. It was great, but that wasn't enough. He kept practicing, getting ready for his huge moment, paying attention to all the little details in the song. Air show happens, he's brought over to the concert, he's backstage, he meets Elton John, they have an amazing 15-minute conversation. Guess what happened? Elton John never asked him to go on stage and play music with him. He tells the story, though, to illustrate a very important point. And he says that lots of people would be gutted, completely devastated. They had worked so hard and prepared for that moment. To not have it happen would crush them. But he looks at it differently. He looks at it through the lens that he was absolutely ready for that moment. He was prepared. He paid attention to the details. He was not going to put himself in a position to not be prepared. So even though he didn't go on stage to play Rocket Man, that was okay, because he knew, he had confidence that had he been asked, he would have gone up there and kicked ass. He would have done a great job at it. There's a very transferable lesson over to our teaching here, and it's that being prepared and paying attention to little details matters. I think that the power of great teaching lies in those little details. And perhaps it's an overplanned lesson, or it's that noticing that one moment when a student is in that right zone of proximal development. Maybe it's preparing for the right word or right question at the exact right time. Whatever it is, when we encourage ourselves to be prepared and to pay attention to the little details of our teaching, both ours and our students' experiences will be greatly enriched. And of course, being prepared on a large scale is critically important. But when it comes right down to it, being prepared at that micro level means never overlooking any details in your teaching. I can honestly say that over the past several years, this has been one of my strongest points in teaching. I always come prepared, I plan, and I'm always constantly I drive myself crazy at times, but I'm always paying attention to the big details and the little details of my teaching, and it has definitely served me well over the years. So I think we have to avoid falling into that trap of routine, methodical thinking that looks only at the big picture of our teaching. So the next time you find yourself over-planning or rushing around like mad, failing to really zero in on the little details of your teaching, I want you to remember the Elton John story. And in particular, what Chris Hadfield says in the book, which is, don't sweat the small stuff. We're always told, don't sweat the small stuff. But Chris Hadfield is here to get in your space and challenge you to sweat the small stuff if you want to be the very best that you can be at whatever it is that you do. Very applicable to our teaching and our careers in education. The last idea I want to share with you is the importance of being inspired. And it's this last lesson that I think specifically relates to purpose, and that clarifying our purpose puts into perspective just how powerful a role that we can have on the students who cross our paths and pass through our gyms throughout our career. I think that being an educator is among the greatest profession in the world, and that it's ultimately about serving others and making a difference in their life. It's about being inspired and inspiring others. So I want to share one last story with you that I first learned about from my friend Andy Hare. Who knows Andy in the audience? Andy is a well-known physical educator from Geelong, Australia. And he's also passionate about triathlons. And he often seeks his own inspiration to fuel his passion forward as he prepares for competitions. When he shared the Team Hoyt story with me, it immediately resonated with my last message and my last lesson about the importance of being inspired. And I think that we have to remember that all we do as educators serves a greater purpose than just today or next week. Many of our students will never blossom under our care, but we serve them best by remembering that one day they will blossom. And it's our nurturing, our warmth, and our support that truly matters the most. I'm going to show you a 4-minute video to give you a glimpse into the Team Hoyt story. And I want you to keep in mind just how powerful a role that you play in the lives of your students. And to know your impact and to understand that and to never ever forget that. Sorry.
imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine, yeah. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine.
Such an amazing story. When Rick Hoyt was born, his parents were told by doctors to never ever expect anything from their son, that he had severe disabilities, life was going to be very difficult raising him, life expectancy might only be 20 or 30 years, whatever it is, it's going to be a difficult life, but they refused to accept that, and they raised their son as any parent would raise their son. Rick Hoyt couldn't communicate at all until he was 8 years old with his parents, when the family was given a special computer that allowed him to use his forehead to tap simple messages onto a computer screen. And it was back in 1977, he was 8 or 9 years old, that he communicated with his father that he wanted to be in a 5-mile race that was being organized by the school, and he wanted his dad to push him. So his dad happily agreed, and they finished dead last. But that night, back at home, Rick had communicated with his father that being in the race made him feel that he could use his legs and that he wasn't handicapped. And he's like, "Dad, let's go in more races." And his dad was an accomplished athlete, had run a bunch of marathons, but had fallen way out of shape. So it inspired his father to get back into shape, and they started to go on a bunch of 5-mile events that turned into half marathons, that turned into full marathons. Rick Hoyt and his father completed 32 straight Boston marathons together. And in the 31st year, that's when the Boston bombs went off. That was going to be their last one, and they're like, nope, we're not finishing on that note, so they came back for the 32nd year. They also competed in numerous Ironman triathlons, and they inspired thousands of parents with kids with disabilities to bring their kids out and get them involved in these races, which inspired another movement of volunteers to go into orphanages and take kids with severe disabilities and get them involved in races and triathlons. So true difference makers in this world. And I think when we filter right down to the bare essence of what making a difference means, we look at how father and son were inspired by each other. And it was this inspiration that motivated them to pursue what's most important in life, which is to give it your all, to love, sorry, I get always emotional and I try not to, so just take a deep breath. To love whatever you do with all of your heart, and to seek inspiration on a daily basis to be the best person that you can be. Very transferable over to our teaching, that ultimately we impact those who we teach, and we can never forget that. And I think when we remember these things, that not only will we have a great career in education, we will also make a profound difference in our subject area of physical education. This is a quote that I always share. Jim Carrey gave an amazing commencement speech at a top business management school a couple years ago. And there's one quote in particular that really stuck with me that I always share wherever I go. And it's, how will you serve the world? What do they need that your talent can provide? That's all you have to figure out. The effect that you have on others is the most valuable currency that there is. So my 3 lessons today: to be more mindful, to be prepared, and to not overlook the little details, and to be inspired. I hope that you can embrace those messages. And I want to leave you with one last thing to take away, and that's, you can change the world. Thank you.